And one of the things that I kind of touched on in the last video that I think is important, getting back to tension and the main thread of the videos, is kind of defining what tension is. And I would say there's basically two types of tension. There is tension that comes, well, there's a couple different kinds of tension. So most basically, tension is muscle exertion and is experienced through proprioception. And relaxation is when there's no muscular exertion. Now, there's basically two types of muscular exertion. There's dynamic tension that comes from muscular exertion that does cause a joint and bone to move, like this. And then there is static, what I call static tension, which is where you're holding something in place. So to move the arm up and down is dynamic tension. To hold it in place is static tension. And both those concepts are going to be important. And we kind of talked about in the last video when I was saying you want to do some examples where you hold, and then you want to start feeling tension when you move. And then there's also one other kind of tension that I call passive tension. And passive tension is tension that comes from stretching or from gravity. And so what I mean by that is as I flex the wrist, there's going to be some muscles and skin that are stretched and some tendons and muscle in the forearm that are not being engaged because either one, you're flexing with wrist muscle, or two, gravity is pushing down. So if you think at the beginning of Scott Temmin's Pumping Nylon, he talks about how when you let the left arm just hang at your side, that's the arm relaxed and at rest. Now, as you raise the arm up, if you don't hold the wrist up with wrist muscles, if you just let your wrist, the muscles that act on the wrist relax, gravity is going to push the wrist down. And you have this same issue with guitar, where if you're playing guitar and you lift the wrist up, the gravity is gonna push it down. This is not any wrist muscle right now, it's just gravity. Same with wrist moving this and this way. As I move up, it's gonna both deviate the wrist and it's gonna flex the wrist. As I bring it back down and get it more even with or parallel to the body, you're gonna see that there's less deviation and less flexion. So passive tension is either when the antagonist muscles are being stretched by the actions of the agonist muscles, or when gravity is affecting the joint and thus the muscles. So in this example, the extensor muscles are not, actually neither the flexor muscles on the bottom of the forearm nor the extensor muscles on the top of the forearm that act on the wrist and either make it go up and down or side to side or rotate. None of those muscles are being engaged, but gravity is forcing it down. And so you're going to feel some tension as a result of the way I position the wrist and then gravity forcing or acting on the wrist once it's been positioned. And you're going to feel some stretching and some, but the muscles themselves are not engaged. It's that stretching feeling. And that's going to come into play pretty big time when we're talking about the technique on guitar and the arm joints down to the finger joints.